Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Fog. This is continuing my quest to review every film that John Carpenter has ever directed. A glowing fog that sweeps over a small coastal town in California, bringing with it vengeful ghosts of a leper colony who were killed in a shipwreck and robbed by the townspeople in the town that the fog is coming into 100 years ago, and the ghosts are there to seek revenge on the town that has lived prosperously there for the past 100 years. This was John Carpenter's first real theatrical film that he developed after Halloween. Obviously, he did make the Elvis TV movie, which I've already reviewed, between Halloween and The Fog, but this is really the true follow-up to Halloween. He helped write it with his writing partner and producer from Halloween, Deborah Hill. They came up with the idea while they were visiting Stonehenge in England, and they saw this sweeping fog, this glowing fog coming up in the distance, and they thought, wouldn't it be cool to make a movie about that? And this is more of a ghost story than Halloween was. It's subtler, a little slower, and not as direct. It's a different kind of a film. And they actually had a lot of trouble making it. When they first made it, a lot of the violence in this originally was just off-screen. It was suggested violence. More of Carpenter horror is like what you don't see is what's scary rather than what you do see. And The Fog was really going to be like that. However, the problem was, after the shoot of The Fog, they realized it really didn't work. On top of that, because Halloween had changed horror so drastically, a lot of people were going more towards the gore in the forefront. They really couldn't, I think a lot of these directors couldn't do the suggested violence that Carpenter was so good at in this, and he would later do it somewhat in The Thing, although he does still have gore in his later films after this. This begins the trend of him bringing violence and gore to more of his films and not just being suggestive. There's certainly gore in Halloween, but there's really not that much gore in Halloween compared to other slasher films of the time. And he actually has to conform to this horror genre that he's so influenced. Also, the Cronenberg film Scanners had come out. A lot of things had changed, and they look at this like old ghost story, which is made in like kind of this Hawksian way. It's very like how Carpenter compares himself to an old studio director. It's really shot in like an older Hollywood way. It's not made like a newer film. Like in the Pauline Kael review from Halloween that I quoted in my Halloween review, is that John Carpenter looks like he just spends a lot of his time watching movies, and that's so great about this. I love that he loves old movies, but compared to these newer directors who are doing a modern thing, The Fog, I think, looked a little too antique, and it just didn't work. That was kind of the most important part. If all of that stuff had worked and it was still scary, but the people who were making this film and had signed John Carpenter to a 2-picture deal, Avco Embassy Pictures, they made this and Escape from New York. They saw it and they didn't like it, so they needed to reshoot a lot of it, and actually 1/3 of this film is from reshoots. It was completely redone. Their whole plot lines that were cut out. I would love to see the first cut. I don't know what happened to it. If it's on bootleg, or they should maybe release a double disc with the original cut. I'd be curious to see that. They really reshaped the movie through these reshoots, and actually you would just see the fog. The ghosts weren't as present and in the foreground as they are in the finished film. The ghosts were more towards the background and spookier, and you could kind of see them, but they really brought out the ghosts and brought out the violence. All the stabbings in the film and the fish hooks was kind of brought up in the reshoots to make it scarier and more modern. And this film wasn't a huge hit. It still made money, it did fine, it just wasn't a huge hit. He seems satisfied with it, but another thing I read, that he's not as proud of The Fog as he is with his other films. That's actually why he let them make a remake, which I don't ever want to see, but that's apparently why, because he thought maybe someone could do it better. His early period from Assault on Precinct 13 and Halloween and The Fog, Escape from New York and The Thing, I consider probably his best period. All those other films advance him in a way, highlight something about him. It's like a different kind of film, each one of them. And then you look at The Fog, and it's kind of the odd man out, because even though it has amazing cinematography, there's a lot of great things about it, it's not really that big of a step up from Halloween. He wanted to capitalize on his success of Halloween and make another horror film. It's just like another kind of genre film. And it's not like Escape from New York, where he's really doing something with genre, taking a Western kind of idea and making kind of this cool sci-fi dystopian movie. Now that I've seen more of these Carpenter films, and this is really at the end of reviewing all the Carpenter films, I only have like one left after this. I don't like it as much as I did before I started this. When I first time I watched The Fog, I was with a friend and we had been up all night partying basically, and we were a little messed up. and Sci-Fi Channel had this on, and the opening was in widescreen. The rest of the film was in pan and scan full screen, but the opening was in widescreen. This is done in a beautiful anamorphic Panavision 2351. It's a pretty low budget film, but it looks probably like it costs 5 times what it really costs, because you have these amazing shots. Her walking down the steps to the lighthouse is an amazing shot. When Adrienne Barbeau's walking down to the lighthouse, it's just beautiful and really highlights how alone she is. And the cinematography was both beautiful and incredibly telling of the story, and it was very simple. It's just amazing how well they could tell this story through visuals, and I think that's something I really love about The Fog. And Dean Cundey, who shot this, and he shot a lot of other Carpenter films. He shot Escape from New York, he shot Halloween. He's an amazing cinematographer with Carpenter, and Carpenter really knows how to use Dean Cundey. I think Dean Cundey's the real star of this film. But when I saw that opening with my friend and we were watching that, I had never seen The Fog before. I was just astonished. Like, they didn't cut to a commercial until like the end of the beginning opening with the old man telling this ghost story to the kids, and all the strange coincidence stuff happening from midnight to 1 a.m. I was really floored at seeing that. I love how this location, they found a way to shoot it, and they get the kind of the isolatedness of beachfront towns, and how this is in summer when this film takes place. They're all wearing coats and hoodies, and it's very isolated. The way you see Adrienne Barbeau walk down to that lighthouse and you see how alone she is, and with the ocean, which is so ominous. I mean, if you've ever seen ocean at night, you just feel like you're just gonna walk into the abyss. It's just eternal nothingness. Carpenter used the location very well, and he actually fell in love with it and bought a house where they shot this film, and it's an amazing place. I'd love to visit it. The story of The Fog is actually based on history that actually did happen. I don't know if it happened to a leper colony, because in this film they killed them not only for their money, but they also killed them because they were lepers, and it would totally be gross to have a leper colony near their town, which is like really fucked up. They're just like, ew, gross, let's kill them. But it is a true story about how they lit a fire on the coast to get them to come in, and then they robbed them and killed them. One of the interesting things about this ghost story and how it's different from, I'd say, Christine and The Thing and Halloween and even The Gas Station and Body Bags, is they're all kind of unexplained. You don't know why The Thing is doing what he's doing. Christine, what's the deal with that car? Michael Myers, he's kind of a marauder. He picks Laurie Strode out at random, right? And then you look at The Fog, and these people have a reason. And I think the reason that this film maybe isn't as terrifying and as interesting to me after I've seen all this is the scariest thing in horror movies is not knowing why. Why is this person after me? And I think revenge films are interesting, and I still like this film. I like this film a lot. I'd still say it's one of his best films, but I think that with it having a reason, it's less like the Carpenter horror that I think he really excels at. This is still interesting. It's interesting to see him do a ghost story. It's very EC Comics. He talks about that in the DVD because there's like a vengeance to it. There's a reason behind these ghosts because they're looking for vengeance. They were very much wronged by this town. I used to look at this as his grand, beautiful film he made after this major success. This is still pretty low budget. I think his grand, beautiful film that he finally got to make because he had some success was really The Thing. It doesn't feel as masterfully made as he usually is, and that's probably because of the reshoots and because they had to redo so much and restructure it. And he said it's really made in the editing room. And I think everyone who worked with Carpenter made this a really good film, but I don't think the direction's as good as many of his classics. He really kind of had a stable of actors like Howard Hawks would have, like John Ford would have. He uses a lot of people that he's used before, like Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau. Tom Atkins would work with him a lot of times in Halloween 3 and Escape from New York. He used Nancy Loomis from Halloween. There are a lot of people in this film you've seen in Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13, and then would go on to work with him a lot of times later. And he got Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis in the film together because she really liked Halloween after she saw her daughter in it. He also named several characters after people he worked with. Dan O'Bannon, who was the screenwriter on Dark Star and eventually Alien. He has a character named Nick Castle, who played The Shape in Halloween, or played Michael Myers in Halloween, whichever you prefer. Tommy Wallace, who was the editor on this film, worked very hard at editing this film, it sounds like, and was a production designer. And Richard Corbett's, Adrienne Barbeau's son's babysitter, is Mrs. Corbett's. I think this is like kind of a celebration of everyone that he worked with, because he really highlights them. It feels like so much of a group effort, whereas everything else feels like more Carpenter controlled. I don't know, I mean, I'm not actually on any of his sets, but that's what I get from his films. I've always liked that about The Fog, is that it feels like such a group effort, like they're really all highlighted, especially Dean Cundey. But it definitely shows a lot of Carpenter. You can tell a movie brat who's obsessed with the movies made this. It was actually filmed right near where The Birds was filmed, and it shares similar elements to The Birds. There's a lot of Hitchcock in there. There's some H.P. Lovecraft ideas in there, this brooding evil that's going to come after us. There's some Edgar Allan Poe in there. It's a good ghost story, and it's kind of sad that it's more of a ghost story, and the period that he very much influenced became something else. You know, you look at Friday the 13th, the first one even, is far more violent than Halloween is in terms of blood and gore, and he really had to start doing that himself, and he couldn't just do the suggested violence of Halloween, which he was so good at. So it's interesting to look at this film both as he had to change it to make it a decent movie, but he also had to change it to get people to see it. It works out and it becomes a good film. It's interesting for me to watch this film now and look at it and go, this isn't the amazing film I remember now that I know so much more about John Carpenter. And I think a part of me will never let it go, because I will always remember sitting with my friend, it was Ian from Knockforce, we were watching The Fog. I will always remember watching that with him and seeing that amazing opening and going like, wow, what the fuck is that? And just staying up and watching this whole movie because I just fell in love with that sequence and loving how amazing it was shot and learning about it and going, I need to know more about this John Carpenter guy. So in a way, it helped make these videos. It really did, because even though I loved Halloween and several of his other films, this is the film that really go, what is this guy up to? What are the rest of his films like? But I still think it's a good movie. I just don't like it as much as I used to. So if you have seen The Fog and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. Also, if you have been watching my videos for a while, you will probably realize that I have reviewed The Fog before. However, that review sucks. I think what I just filmed, hopefully, is better than that review. I think it is. I think I did a more in-depth review. I think it was way better. But if you want to watch that, you can see how much I've grown since then, and how my hair was like, well, I don't know what was going on in that review. That was, I don't know. But, you know, if you want to see how much I've changed over the years, that was in 2009. Check it out, I guess. But yes, I have reviewed The Fog before, but I think this was a much better review. So